Good afternoon, everybody. This is Hunter Mozingo bringing you your daily market insight video here on Monday, June the 6th, about 20 minutes after market close. And today we're going to talk about two stocks that you need to watch very closely this week. Very important charts and stocks to the overall market. We're going to get into why they're important and what to watch for on those charts here in just a second. But first, let's run through what just happened, and that is we had a big gap up this morning that faded, and consolidation continues. So we had a gap up, Q's up about 1.5%, S&P up over 1%, which actually was looking pretty strong early this morning. Ultimately, as the day wore on, those faded and closed relatively close to the lows of the day. Performance-wise, G6 up about 0.5%, S&P and the Q's up about 1/3. Dow basically flat, just slightly green. Mid caps, the leader of the day, up 0.58. Russell 2000 also up about 1/3%. 60/40 just ever so slightly green, up 0.02, and Grotection up 0.12 today. So there is no changes to the trend gauge or market state. Both of those remain the same. Short-term uptrend 526 follow-through day here on market state. And then on trend gauge, no changes from last Friday or last Thursday's video. Everything still remains the same here. We are seeing mid caps and small caps get very close to their 50-day. We're hanging out above the 21 EMA on all major indices, so no change here. So no changes to trend gauge, no changes to market state. All right, so let's go ahead and highlight Revere for just one moment, and then we're going to get to the tail of the tape. As I usually do, just let me point out my email here. If you have any questions or comments about the video, please just send me an email, hunter@revereasset.com. If you want to know more about what Revere does, how we manage money, what our approach is, what our strategy is, etc., just email myself, or you can email anybody here and they'll get you the answers you need. Merrill, Dan, Tim, or Don at revereasset.com as well. So let's go ahead and get to the tail of the tape here, and let me get the S&P up instead of Apple real quick. And we'll move through this pretty quickly here. So sentiment-wise, put-call ratio still continuing to hang out around this one area. That seems to be the new normal, closed at 1.02. VIX only up slightly today, just a little bit here, right around this 25 level, and the fear greed at 30. Still in the fear gauge, but up pretty significantly off the lows we saw back in this range. News-wise, solar tariffs removed. So we saw that impact solar stocks pre-market. A lot of those names were up pretty big. Some held on to their gains better than others. We're going to look at those charts in a moment as well. What were we watching today? S&P versus this 4075, 4100 support, this support and resistance level at 4130, and then resistance here up in this 4160 to 4200 level. Obviously, like we said, we gapped up. We were above that 4130 level. We made a run up to about 4170 roughly, and ultimately ended up coming back. We did hold up above this 4100 level. So kind of in the range, if you will, today. Action-wise, a lot of chop. Again, we opened up 1.1% base, then had a nice strong move up to that 4169 level, base again for a while. And then we had a sharp move down as the TNX or rates started to move higher, flagged for a little bit, another sharp move down to a new low of day there, as you can see, base. Then we had a nice little move up to about 4140. And then that got shut down to new lows of the day. And then we had a little bit of a slight move up into the close. So low of the day, 4109. As I mentioned, we held above that 4100 level. High of the day, 4168.71 or something like that. So still just in this range, living in this range here on the S&P, as well as the Q's doing a lot of that same type of behavior. Notes-wise today, we did have Amazon 20-for-1 split go into effect. So we saw Amazon trading around this new price here. Performance-wise, I know we touched on this. S&P opened up 1.1, closed up 0.31. G6 up about 0.5%. 60/40 up 0.02. Grow up 0.12. Sector-wise, rates, solar, wheat, natural gas, banks up. Bonds, gold, and miners, fertilizers, biotechs down. Portfolio-wise, beta up a little bit here as we added to SSO. And the bottom line, choppy action, but we're still in this consolidation range. Again, we do have a declining 50 that's catching up to us pretty quick, right around this 4240 area. Got a rising 21 EMA right around 41 or 4090, excuse me. And today's close 4121, gap up fades, but we're still in the consolidation range. So let's get to the charts. As I mentioned, we're still living in this range on the S&P, the Qs, IWM, MDY, whatever you want to look at. A good place to start would be set an alert at the highs of last week and the lows of last week. So last week's low is 40.74 roughly. Last week's high, 41.77. That'll give you a good idea as to which direction we're breaking on this consolidation. Are we moving out to the upside? Are we breaking these lows to the downside? And that goes for all the major indices. Good place to start there as far as setting alerts. QQQ living on this 21-day, just continuing to test it over and over since we got above it here. But so far, continuing to hold up and move higher as we just kind of hang out around the 21 and the confluence of the 8-day here on the Qs. DIA, the Dow, same situation, and same thing goes for the Dow and small caps and mid caps. Set alerts at the highs of last week and the lows of last week, but still just kind of in this range today. Didn't quite make it through these highs, came back, but still just in the middle of this range here on DIA. Holding on above the 21 here, as you can see above on all these indices here. MDY and IWM, a little relative strength as they're closer to their 50-day and challenging that. But keep in mind, these were flat or more horizontal while the S&P and the Qs were moving up. So they're just closer to that 50-day as it is. But MDY poked its head above the 50-day, unable to get above it definitively today. And IWM also getting pretty close here. As you can see, these are a little bit more extended off the 21, showing a little bit of short-term strength here in mid and small caps. So very quickly, before we get to those two key stocks that you need to watch, let's take a quick look at the 10-year note. And as we mentioned when we talked about our position TBT, which goes up when rates go up, this is a pretty strong bounce off the 50. That was the synopsis or the plan when we bought it, and that has worked out well. As you can see here, the 10-year note now pushing back above 3%. That is a big level to potentially reclaim and something worth noting on the 10-year yield there. Okay, so those two stocks that you want to know about, it's Tesla and it's Apple. And the reason why is both of these names had a really bad end to the last week. They were down pretty decently on Friday, and what that resulted in was Apple and Tesla both being back below the 21 and back below the 80 EMA. So what you want to see on Tesla here is you want to at least see this 700 area hold and possibly a quick reclaim of these moving averages, the 21 and the 8 that is. But unable to do that today. It poked its head above the declining 8 here on Tesla, but came back in and finished below it. So if these lows are broken, that's something to watch here. If the 700 level gets pierced and it's unable to reclaim it, something to watch here on Tesla. If you're a bull, you want to see these lows hold and possibly get back above these moving averages here. But I think it's important to note that Tesla and Apple both starting to live below that declining 8 and below the 21 EMA. And secondly, both of these names have what's called a death cross, and that is the 50-day simple moving average crossing through the 200-day simple moving average. So Apple, you'll see that death cross as well. Doesn't always mean that stocks are just going to go down a bunch more from there, but it is something to note. It's something that hasn't happened to Apple in a very, very long time. And you see a very similar type of setup here on Apple and on Tesla. Nasty day on Friday, back below the 21, back below the declining 8. And unable to reclaim either of those, at least today. So again, if you're watching Apple, you want to see this 145 level roughly hold, and you want to see a reclaim of those moving averages. But I just want to point out that these are very important. Whichever way these two stocks break will obviously impact the market. If you see Apple break below this 145 level and Tesla break below 700, that's something to pay attention to. If you see them back up over those moving averages, back up through the 21 EMA, that's also something you want to be paying close attention to. So two key stocks to watch this week. Mentioned Amazon split, as you can see here, trading around 125. This one closed near the lows of the day, but it was up 4 or 5% at one point today. And Google was also one of the leading stocks up until the end of the day here, as you can see, gave back a lot of its gains too. But it was also up a decent bit today before coming back towards the lows of the day. So Google and Amazon, two bright spots, or two of the better, stronger stocks today in the big core 7 technology stocks. Moving along here, ON on semiconductor, a current position we have, up a decent bit today with some volume on the announcement that it'll be joining the S&P 500. We also saw the lithium names bounce and can get back above their ADMA here on LTHM, and then ALB, which is acting a little bit better back above that 250 level. And I say a little bit better, I mean not so crazily volatile. LTHM has some serious volatility to it. We mentioned the solar names having a big day on the solar tariffs being removed. They did give back a lot of those gains, as you can see here. Enphase was up closer to 10% at one point, finished up 5. TAN is the sector ETF here, which actually is poking its head above the 200-day, something to watch there. But some big volume in this space, as you can see the last day or today, and then even over the last couple of weeks here, but not necessarily able to hold on to the gains as the market came back as well. But that is something very important to pay attention to on the solar space. Those tariffs being removed, it's important to monitor whether that's a positive catalyst for these companies and they can really get something going. And then lastly here in the oil space, some names having really strong days like Marathon Petroleum. Then these are going to be refining and marketing names mainly that had good days today. And then you've got Valero Petroleum, another name in the space, up big today. But you had other oil names that were down today, like Halliburton, down about 1.5% today. LNG, which is an oil name that we own, down about a little over 1% today. So it's kind of a mixed bag, just depended on what oil companies you own today as to if they were green or if they weren't. Some having a good day, some not so much, some, really doing next to nothing. So oil stocks, a bit of a mixed bag today. We saw semiconductors lag today as well. Here's GFS. This is a new issue semiconductor name. And then AMD, which has been a relative strength leader, a little bit of a laggard today, as you can see, down just about 0.5%, but lagging the markets today. Microsoft, the laggard of the big core 7, as you can see, closing back below the 21, just ever so slightly, and below the ADMA. I mean, it is like splitting hairs, so really not below by much, but it is important to know this 270 level is a really big spot on Microsoft, as you can see there, the lows from here back in March, trying to possibly fight through that and get back up over that 270 level, but a laggard today, Microsoft for sure. We mentioned the fertilizers as well being a laggard. Here's CF, not the prettiest looking chart, and NTR, two of the names in that space, both look very similar, as you can see. A couple more here, LNTH, a name we own that was a laggard today, but not by a ton. A lighter volume pullback, but just still hanging out above this ADMA. So nothing wrong with LNTH, but down about 2.5 today. And then lastly, the sectors. We mentioned biotechs and gold and their miners week. You can see here GDX down about 1%, XBI down closer to 2 or 3. So these were the weak sectors from today. So that is going to wrap up today's video. Again, Tesla and Apple, two imperative stocks to pay attention to this week and see, and not just this week, the coming week, see how they fare. Are they able to reclaim those moving averages? Do they break their recent lows? Two very important stocks to the market, to stocks that people are familiar with and they know. So keep a close eye on those names. But that is going to be it for today's video. I'll see you guys on Thursday as well as the podcast. Y'all have a great week.